And welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is showing up. What if that's enough? What if it's enough to just show up and be present and respond to whatever arises and to allow for what's emergent? So that's going to be our conversation today, and we'll see what shows up. Before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present, right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we're talking about showing up. So the idea behind this notion of showing up is being able to engage with life without pre-existing or predetermined agenda, maybe. Just to show up and see what shows up, show up and see what emerges, to actually just be alive and engaged with life and bring whatever it is you bring, not having to be a certain way in order to show up, to just allow for whatever state we're in, whatever uh, preoccupations, just to show up, because it's in showing up that opportunity arises. It's in showing up that we can be available for whatever might emerge. So that this comes from this morning just feeling like, I don't know what I'm up to. I don't know how I feel. If I didn't have this responsibility, I wouldn't be here. But I made a commitment, so I'm showing up to honor that commitment. And I think that there's something of great value in that for us. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. So we're talking about showing up and being willing to show up even when we don't necessarily want to. So um, um, I'm kind of self-referencing here. Like this morning, if I hadn't had this commitment, I wouldn't be here. And I can not show up anytime I want. Um, I think I think this notion of putting ourselves in a position for emergence when we don't have an expectation, we don't have an agenda, we maybe even would prefer to curl up in a ball, for instance. I think we all have those curl up in a ball days. Um, and then to just show up and see what happens, and to know that it's okay to show up however we are. You know, we are what we are. We're experiencing what we're experiencing, and um, to allow ourselves to be moved into whatever is emerging. So this is kind of an interesting thing to play with, because if we think about motion as a spiral instead of as a directional thing necessarily, but as a spiral, we have momentum. We can be taking that momentum down, right? We can follow that spiral into a pit, or we can follow the spiral into something that's expansive. And this comes back to our choice. We always have choice. And the biggest grace is to become present to the fact that we have choice, and then to actively engage in that choice. And maybe not just go for the path of least resistance. So it could be the path of least resistance. Rosalind, thank you so much. Rosalind says, thankful for starting my morning with you. Well, I have to tell you, I am thankful for starting my morning with you. You make a huge difference. You showing up, you just showing up makes me want to show up. So this is what we can see in life, that just showing up can have such an impact, right? Like the support that you show by being here in the morning, Rosalind, allows me to show up, encourages me to show up. And so you make a huge difference. And I think that when we just show up, it can make a huge difference. So for instance, when people are invited to events or parties, or well, let's say events, we often don't realize that we often don't realize the difference that we make being somewhere. You know, we might feel like it doesn't really matter whether we show up or not, that we won't be missed, it won't make a difference. And my experience anyway is that it does make a difference. It does make a difference when people show up. You know, if you throw a party and nobody comes because they had other things that they were doing and they didn't realize that they mattered, what kind of party is it, right? So I've been pretty amazed actually to see some footage of different demonstrations that are happening around the country and around the world, and to see these are all people who showed up. These are all people who took the initiative to show up. And in town halls, people taking the initiative to show up. And that hasn't been an arena for me so much. You know, I haven't gone to tons of demonstrations. I've been to a few, and actually they were incredibly moving and powerful for me. But I think we're all being called to show up, just to show up. to be counted, to be seen, to be heard, to be engaged. And it's okay to bring whatever it is that's going on with you, you know? And we also have the option to leave that at the door, right? We also have the option to say, okay, I'm going to choose something else. I don't have to be, I can move into this new space. I can move into this new energy, and I can source myself from a different place, rally myself from a different place. Sometimes, uh, we talked a few minutes ago about momentum. There's also a tremendous power to inertia, right? When we're in a place of stuck or still, and to actually get moving out of that place to create some acceleration takes oftentimes takes a deliberate intent, to just overcome that inertia. But there are rewards to it, right? Getting out of our own way is certainly one of those benefits, and to be more actively engaged, to find ourselves more actively engaged. So it was interesting. I was having a conversation. Well, I was having multiple conversations yesterday where people were dealing with pretty intense emotion. And I think there's a lot of that going around, and a lot of us are very empathic. And as empaths, it's often hard to distinguish what's us and what's not us. And it makes me remember to share this practice with you, to just go from with your palm from your forehead across your head down to the nape of your neck, and say, I'm me and only me. And what we're saying is that my energy is mine. In other words, I'm not taking on the energies of everything around me. It doesn't mean we don't engage. What it means is it's sort of consolidating our own energy so that we're not as porous to all these other energies coming in and through, and oftentimes debilitating us. Because I think also that as empaths, in a way, I was saying this to somebody yesterday, we act as air filters, to be processing and transmuting emotion that's in the atmosphere. And that can take a toll because we become more porous. And so this I'm me and only me, reclaiming my field, sort of kind of pulling back in our own energy, can help us to maintain that sense of center, and not be at the effect of whatever way the wind is blowing, whatever the emotions are that are prevailing, because otherwise we tend to, well, we're processing them. When we have a stronger core, we're better able to process things. And when we become kind of amorphous, when our energy field becomes more diffuse, there's less coherence. And so being more coherent allows us to be more effective also. So I think this incredible atmosphere of emotion, it's going to affect us. And it doesn't necessarily have to be rational, it's experiential. And we have the ability to allow ourselves to process that emotion through when we don't resist it. If we resist it, or when we resist it, what happens is we actually are giving it more energy and making it more intense. And it takes energy to be controlling that or suppressing the experience of that energy rather than just allowing it to move through. And allowing it to move through is, I'm not saying that's all a cakewalk either, because those emotions are painful oftentimes. And I've known so many of us who have experienced emotion so deeply that to the prospect of going to those depths can be frightening. I've known people to say, well, if I allow myself to feel that grief, I may never come back. I may get lost in it. And in my experience, it's not the truth of the matter. In my personal experience and my experience with others, particularly if you can have someone there to to hold space for you as you move through the emotion, that can be really powerful to remind you you're okay. You're okay. It's okay to have those feelings. Let's feel the feelings. And then what happens is they dissipate. When we don't feel those feelings, or when we resist feeling those feelings, they persist. And I realize that that may seem counterintuitive, because if we are feeling the feelings, the thought is that they're going to stay and keep gaining momentum. But in fact, what happens is it's energy. And as we allow that energy to move, it moves. It moves out ultimately. But we often try to restrain it or to suppress it. And when we suppress it, you can imagine that maybe we're compressing it, that we're amplifying it, that we're intensifying it. And so showing up just with what's there and allowing ourselves space to move through whatever it is without having to make stories about it, without having to justify it, because emotion isn't rational. So I know that when I have an emotion, I'll say, well, why am I feeling that? What is going on? What is that about? And when I ask those kinds of questions, what happens is that I end up making stories up about why I'm feeling that and what it's about. And those stories can help to perpetuate those emotions. Because we can become very attached to the story. For instance, if we're angry, we can find a loop. I'm angry because this person did that and they did that. It's often a blame thing, whether it's blaming self or blaming others. And that spiral is not a healthy one. So if we go underneath that instead of the story to actually experience the experience, to feel the feeling, to feel the anger, where is it in your body? What's the sensation of it? Feels like a cauldron spitting fire. Okay, great. So you see this cauldron spitting fire. Now what's happening with the cauldron? And now that you notice it, that it's a cauldron spitting fire, what's happening with the anger? Maybe it turns into something else. And we can keep following the emotions in that way without having to make up stories that justify the emotion. You know, the emotion is what it is, it's energy. And it's okay. It's a communication. It's a communication from our body and being. Sometimes if there's anger, not only do we want to address the emotion, but maybe there's something that is an alarm signal going off to say, hey, something's not quite right here. Something's out of alignment. What are the corrective measures that we need to make to get back into alignment? Because we don't have to stay stuck. It actually takes energy to stay stuck. It actually takes the energy of repeating and reinforcing the same stories, the same patterns. And there's a multitude of ways that we can interact with our experience, that we can intervene with into our into the momentum. Because when there's momentum, it's almost easier to redirect, right? When we're in inertia, when we're still and stuck, trying to get out of that, trying to initiate movement is often harder than when we have some momentum, although we might be moving like a freight train in a direction that's not the best, but we can maybe start moving it, shifting it slightly, and maybe even dramatically by, again, curiosity. Being curious, what's happening here? Why am I so irate? What is it that, what's the story that I'm telling myself? What does that harken back to? And we're very amazing storytellers. We're very remarkable storytellers. And we fuel our stories oftentimes by convincing ourselves that they're not stories, that they're actual truths. So all this started with showing up without an expectation, without a particular intention, just showing up and seeing what would emerge. And what's emerging is riding these waves of being, right? Riding these waves of being and emotion, that we do act in ways as kind of like air filters, you know, transmuting energies. And maybe the first energy that's most important to transmute is our own. To be conscious of our own energy and to be respectful and compassionate about it, to recognize the shifts and changes, and to be allowing and curious and compassionate rather than judgmental. So curiosity opens all kinds of windows and doors for us in all kinds of circumstances and curiosity loosens our grip, right? Because it's like, well, what's in there? You got to open it up and take a look. And it allows for more movement. And everything is in motion. When we resist that motion, when we try to hold on, when we try to control, we're kind of going counter to the direction in which things are flowing. So let's just show up for ourselves, show up for others, show up for the world, and allow for what emerges. So that's the big adventure. And that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And until next time, I'm so grateful for these opportunities to share morning musings together with you around this experience of being human. So until next time, so much love to you.